everyone, and welcome to the Underdogs in Africa podcast. I had a shitty week, but we move. I'm in the studio. It's really, really cool. A big shout out to Figure Eight, power to she, for letting us the studio and giving us the opportunity to have a great conversation that I think is really important. I've got a cool elephant in the room today. In fact, I never thought that I would vibe with her. Funny story. So she is my husband's ex-girlfriend's ex-best friend. Yeah, I know. Crazy. But anyway, we ended up becoming really good friends ourselves, found that we had so much in common. And I'm always a firm believer that, you are who you surround yourself with. Show me your 5 friends and I'll tell you who you are. This is one of them. She has an incredible journey. Her story is so colorful, but so inspiring. She's moved across corporates, inside of an NPO at the moment. She is a startup founder herself. I feel incredibly inspired by her on a daily basis, both within her professional career, but also the care that she takes of herself and the fact that she is living her best life as a one-woman show. We'll get more into it in a bit. For the moment, I would like to introduce you to Ashmita Singh, who is the founder of SwapVend and a very, very good friend of mine. Hey, Ashmita.
Miranda.
How you doing?
Oh, didn't expect that intro.
So let's get right into it and address the big elephant in the room. Yeah, what did you think when you first met me, knowing that I was Prelin's wife?
This is getting deeper. Okay. Didn't think we were talking about that. What did I think when I first met you? I was very scared.
Why?
Well, you just explained to everyone what the relation is. But, to just get back to the point, your husband is a good friend of mine. And he has like really good judgment. So
well, now he does.
Yes, now he does. No, oh yes, okay. I knew that he made the best decision. He married you. Yeah. He didn't do that before.
Well done.
So I knew it would have been a bit weird for me to navigate, but I was hoping that we could navigate it. You didn't tell people that we actually have siblings that we are raising, first siblings.
Thank you.
So I was hoping that we could, we'd find our way due to that very important commonality, husband aside.
Yeah. And play dates and stuff with the kids.
Exactly.
Yeah, not real kids, guys. These are dog kids.
Yes.
In terms of 2 deaf dogs and 2 girls that are attached to us.
Yes.
But that did obviously, strengthen the bond, and that's pretty cool. Really excited to have you here, Ash. And we've been wanting to do this for a really long time. I think that, you've come a long way in terms of just your SwapVend journey, but in your life, overall. And just firstly, I want to say to you that I am very proud of you.
Thank you.
I'm also very grateful to be part of your journey and to be your friend. So thank you for that. I'm glad that we were able to figure that out. Tell us about where you come from.
Okay, so I come from, I'm going to tell you where I come from geographically. So I come from a town in Durban called Phoenix. So I'm originally from Phoenix. Actually, interesting story. I was born in Chatsworth, which is another town, and then moved to Phoenix when I was 1 year old. So I'm very well seasoned when it comes to coming from the hood. So yeah, so that's where I'm from, and I am the youngest from a family of 4. I have 3 older brothers. As you can see, I'm Indian, so you can imagine the dynamic having 3 older brothers, being the youngest. I would live a very sheltered life. I come from a really great family.
Yeah.
My parents are just incredible. And you know what? My earliest memory is of my dad being an entrepreneur. My dad has always been trying different things, always trying to do different things just to move the dial forward. And he wasn't very good at it, but he always tried. I think he was very good at always just getting back on the horse and figuring out what was the next thing. But he took care of us. We were a family of 7 actually, because it was my core
Sure.
family and my mom's mom who lived with us. So we had not the right size when it came to a house, not the right size when it came to a budget. But my dad made it happen. It was weird. It's like his willingness to take care of my grandmother just created this abundance in the house, and we just didn't know where it came from. So yeah, so that's where it all started, and it started on at 13 North Croft Drive, which was this very main road in the heart of Phoenix.
Yeah. And during that period, your dad bought a taxi.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
So during one of his very exciting business ventures, my dad was actually a butcher. That's how it started.
Okay.
And then I don't know what happened. I was too young, but the whole butcher story didn't go, so the shop closed. And my dad tried to dabble in the fashion industry. But he had a really cool concept, which I tell him, I wish I was older then, because I really feel like I could have made that happen for him. I feel like him and I together would have been the perfect match to really drive that business. So his business model was basically sourcing from various places like the latest fashion at a really good price. And he would use the taxi as the mobile. He had
Oh.
built this on his own. He built these little hanging structures for inside. So he'd drop all the seats, put that in, and then he would hang all these dresses and clothes or whatever it was. It was predominantly female clothing. And he would basically drive through Phoenix and he would sell.
Sell it.
And I mean, if you think about it, his market very low disposable income, but he really price pointed it well. The business was quite a success, but that was the primary use of the taxi. And then on the weekends, that taxi turned into a family vehicle, and we would just load everyone in, and we would
Go to the beach.
Go to the beach, actually. Yeah. So yeah, that was it. And we had
That's pretty cool.
And we had a dog, Max, so he would come with us too. Yeah.
Special. I mean, you talk about your dad building the stuff in the taxi, makes me think of my own dad. I mean, he was always very good with his hands.
Yeah.
And maybe it was like a generational thing,
Yeah.
right? Like my dad built all the gates in our house. I mean, the main gate, the door gate, the side gate, the glass door gate,
Yeah.
and then he built the carport. And just before he passed away, he built these cool like porky pot holders made
Wow.
out of metal. And not in Phoenix, but in Joburg.
Yes.
In some of the more suburban areas, though, he would sit on the side of the road and sell these porky pots.
Wow.
And that's a whole other podcast. But it just brings back and triggers memories
Yeah,
of
yeah.
our parents and those days, what they had to do
Yeah.
in order to make a living. And their skills were not, building cool stuff off of AI. Their skills were using their hands and their physical talents to kind of build products and sell that, to cater for their families. Just back to your upbringing and the area that you come from. Describe, the nature of Phoenix in KwaZulu-Natal as well as Chatsworth. You say that you're a thoroughbred hood girl. Talk to us about, what that dynamic is like, what the environment was like. Because, just to put it into context for those who may not know, but also to relate to those who come from the same, areas.
So I have to describe it in 2 different versions, because the one I grew up in is very different from the one that's currently standing there today.
Yeah.
And I think growing up there, I didn't realize where I was, because that was the world I was exposed to. I told you that we live in very financially constrained, in a constrained household. So we didn't travel a lot. We didn't go out a lot. I mean, funny story, when I look out from my house, there were houses on the horizon, and I thought the world ended there. And legit, I thought if we went any further, that was the end of the world.
Like Mufasa and Simba.
Yeah. But I actually had such a limited concept of what the world was. And basically, that was my world. So whatever I was exposed to was the reality and the context that I had. And I'll tell you, like with key things, there was inconsistency around me. So there was just like some nice houses, some very basic houses, lots of like very heavily stacked infrastructure. I remember one day driving down a road, and I asked my dad, how can 2 cars fit on this? And he said, no, it was not designed. In the Group Areas Act, they designed these for bicycles, because when they put people into townships, they believed that the socioeconomic state would be that
Would
people
never
wouldn't
provide for a car.
they would provide for a car. And people have evolved, and there's so much of wealth and talent. You just mentioned with your dad, and the fact that you are busy crafting stuff, there's skills, people all around me, that's the one thing I remember. Everyone was hustling. That wasn't a word then when I was growing up, but
Yeah.
everyone was making a plan. And there was a lot of activity around me. I felt safe within that space, but it was actually a very unsafe space from the perspective that I don't think the structures worked back then the way it should have, or the way it worked everywhere else when it came to safety, when it came to the basic things that people actually are used to and take for granted in other segments of the population. Um, I say it that way because I was a child and I didn't really have much to compare to. But when I go back now, so my entire family's moved out. Everyone has come up as in for everyone's sake to Johannesburg. So we've moved up in its entirety. Even my parents have. But when I go back there and when I try to engage, number one, I find it very difficult to engage because I don't know how to reintegrate. Things have changed tremendously. So when we were put into these townships, like any other township, I think that's what's important. The mindset of apartheid and the mindset of how the township was supposed to be constructed infrastructurally was that there needed to be one access and two access points, one entry and one exit.
Yeah.
And everything in it was built for a period of time that would self-destruct. To my point on the single roads
Yeah.
for a single car roads for two bicycles. So basically, the intention when these were constructed infrastructurally was for it not to last.
Limit progression.
Limit progression. So it's just like literally economically constricting. It's
Yeah.
designed with that in mind. So when you go back now, infrastructure is failing. It's really bad. Every single time I'm about to enter on Phoenix Highway, as you're coming from, interestingly enough, Amshlanga, from one like capital of like a lot of wealth, and as you're coming in, everything is just collapsing in front of you. 8 family flats, whatever that looks like, banks are collapsing. There's no the roads are not in a good quality, litter, whatever it may be. And as you go deeper, you can see the population has increased quite substantially. And so is everything else, right? People are progressing within the confines and the constraints. People are looking for opportunities. People are trying to access things. But the reality is that environment is just not sustainable. So infrastructurally and I think mentally, people haven't come out of that apartheid mindset because there's still that heavy access issue when you're looking at it. And till today, those are the main ways to enter. There's Phoenix Highway that runs through with one single entry and access point that's there. Yeah, just to come to it, I just think that people are still feeling very constrained by that mindset. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my whole family comes from Durban. My dad comes from Stanger.
Okay.
My mom is from Mobeni Heights.
I'm learning so
Phoenix.
much about you today, so this is really great.
And my brother and my sister, they grew up in Durban. I had an auntie in Merebank, and they would, often spend time there.
Yeah.
And then they had moved to Joburg just before I was born.
Okay.
So I've spent my whole life in Joburg, but my whole family, barring one or two super close relatives, are here in Joburg, right? And I think that it's something that I'm trying to work on, where I go back and I feel guilty.
Yeah.
And it's not that I am not doing whatever I can to, rise with people around me. That's very close to my heart, as it is yours.
Yeah.
And that is one of the areas that we, really
Definitely,
connected on. But I do feel, just sometimes overwhelming guilt because, some people are able to get out of their environments and situations regardless of what those are, and some just aren't. And I'll bring it back into a very recent example, which is, I say this with respect, but in a lot of cases when I've been in environments, specifically in the corporate world, in the working world, right? And I'm surrounded by other Indian females who come from that part of the country, KZN, Durban. There is a misalignment in terms of mindset, behaviors, characters, and just, I think, overall values. I mean, have you had similar experiences being, an Indian woman that comes from Durban and I being an Indian woman that comes from Joburg? And I just feel like, where does that come from, in your view?
Yeah.
Or am I just full of crap?
Listen, I can't speak on that point. So, no, I'm kidding. That's an interesting one. As you were speaking, I recalled something. So, on this journey of coming to, SwapVend that you mentioned that I founded, I had gone back to Phoenix to try and do a survey because I felt like it was important for me to go back. That overwhelming guilt you spoke about, I
Yeah.
just it's in me all the time, and it's not for me. It's a little bit of guilt, but it's also a responsibility that I felt that there was a reason I was planted there, and I needed to go back. So
Yeah.
everyone's serving the major townships when it comes to trying to determine what are the solutions we need. So I decided, let me go back home. And I remember going through, and will you believe this? I went to 13 different places and no one wanted to do my survey.
Sure.
And it was Indian people who I grew
Yeah.
up with. I even pointed, guys, I used to live there on 13 North
Sure.
Park Drive. But every single, there were men, but almost every woman that I engaged with had this look on her face like, who do you think you are? So, like, what are you coming? The savior mentality that you
Yeah.
have. But it was not at all that way. I really wanted to hear
Yeah.
from people. So that was an interesting thing which immediately came into my mind. But yes, I think to answer your question about those interactions and whether I've had them, yes, very much so. I thought it was just me, so it's good to hear. It might be a us problem.
Yeah,
We seem
it
to
might just
aligning.
be.
Yeah. I'm keen to hear from anyone else if they've also had that issue. But I do think that it's various things. I think a lot of people, and again, I'm generalizing, so I stand to be corrected. But the people that I've engaged with, and I think in an extension in my family, I've seen it. There are two types of people: people who want that to define them. I've come from like I said, I'm
Yeah.
from the hood. I like to tell people I'm from Phoenix. My mom often asks me, why do you always lead with that? Don't you feel like you've come out of it and you don't have to keep speaking about it? Whereas my brothers, and I really hope they don't watch this or listen to this, but they don't like to tell people where they've come from. And
Yeah.
it's not because of embarrassment. Maybe it is. I don't know, but I know them. And I just think,
Judgment.
yeah, it's judgment. And I think they were older than me, right? So
Yeah.
I spent a less amount of time. So the exposure to it, the amount of time that they actually grew up during like apartheid and the mentalities. And I'm sorry to keep taking it back there, but it's a reality that I think is still so alive. And I think a lot of people don't want to live within that context.
Yeah.
So there's some of them who are just like, I'm not about that life. I don't want to associate. And there's others who say that life brings up too much of like traumatic undertones, and I want to like redefine this. And I think Joburg has been like a cleansing ceremony for a lot of people. It's like the place you go to once you hit the N3 and you get out.
Yeah.
You get out,
Yeah.
and a lot of people don't come back. I suppose, whatever that back looks like. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I recently had a conversation with my brother. Oh, by the way, this is Prelan, everyone. This is my husband.
This is the guy that brought us together.
Thank you for your previous decisions. I must remember this is going public. So Prelan's setting up and managing all of our video and sound and running the podcast. We had a crazy week this week. And unfortunately, we parted ways with our media team. So if you're a media person and you know how to edit content and you're great at content creation, like hit us up. We love discovering new talent. But yeah, life of a startup founder. And on that note, can we get some coffee? Like some iced coffees or something? Is that what you came for? Sorry. Okay, thanks.
Well, just the point of
Yeah.
life of a startup founder. I love how resourceful you are. 'Cause, we just got into a figure of 8, and you already started having conversations with people just in general and building network. So when you speak about me and being like proud of me, I'm ever learning from you. It's like 1 minute in, and you're thinking about ways to network and ways to derive value. So
Thank you.
yeah.
I appreciate that quite a bit. Sometimes, yeah, it's good to hear it because it gives you a little boost that you don't know that you need, but you really do. And you do that very often for me. So I really appreciate that. Circling back to your point, right, just around you hit the N3, you get out and you don't look back.
Yeah.
How has, where you come from, because it's such a big part of your story and it is such a big part of your business.
Yeah.
How did that inspire you, one, to leave? How did you get the courage to make that step? What was that journey like? And what did you do when you touched down Joburg?
So, listen, I'm sure everyone's going to say the same thing, but I always felt like there was something different inside in the way I looked at the world.
Yeah.
It was very different. I played chess when I was 6 years old. My eldest brother, Avinash, he taught me how to play chess. He's 12 years older than me. And I don't know, he took a chance and he taught me this. And from there onwards, I just felt like I always liked different things. So while there were kids on the field playing actual sport, I was playing academic sport. And I was doing very academic things. I almost got my colors in chess, but it was so bad for my street cred that I refused. I mean, I boycotted this. The teachers were like, you don't understand. I mean, I really regret that looking back, because I would have had colors in chess today.
Were you popular, by the way? Were you an it girl?
So no, I was popular with the teachers.
Okay.
Yeah, I was very, very, very like book smart, and I loved. I mean, I'm not saying that arrogantly. I really was. I spent all my time reading and studying and wanting to just be the best.
Yeah.
Don't laugh at me, but I used to go to school very early so I could carry the teachers' bags.
Oh
in
my!
School. My dad told me that you respect your educator and you make sure that. But I took it a bit further.
But you're an overachiever.
I was an overachiever,
which is great. That's how we know SwapVend's going to be super successful.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
So like that was me. I can't believe I'm saying this because it was a memory I tried to keep very, very down. But yeah, so I played a lot of the unpopular sport and for me, I always wanted more. Like wanted to carry that bag. I wanted to be recognized. I wanted to be for the hard work. I didn't want things on a platter. I wanted to work for things, but I felt like there was a direct correlation between effort and reward.
Yeah.
And reward meant either recognition or it meant something, and again, not in an arrogant way, in a conceited way, but just to say, there's something to always aspire
look forward
for.
to.
Yeah,
yes.
and you want more.
Yeah,
and again, coming back to my point that I thought the world was this large, a lot of things to achieve inside the small thing. Bottom line is I always wanted more, and I wanted to always push the boundary. And I was very lucky, so I can't sit here and make it seem like I did all the heavy lifting. I mean, being in a constrained environment at home, it really was my eldest brother, again, Avinash, the one who taught me how to play chess, who, number one, instilled in me the fact that I could do things like play chess at 6. And I don't mean play like a child. I mean, I was playing like an adult.
Yeah.
And went on to, when I was 12, winning a chess tournament where I beat people in matric.
Sure.
So my brother was like constantly investing in me.
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
Did you beat him?
I did beat him a few times, but I can't remember. But I do know that I beat these really smart kids and won the interzonal chess tournament.
Wow.
So yeah, I had a trophy that was like higher than me, it's taller than me. It was a floating trophy, so I don't have it to prove anything. But he really set the standard, and I think he broke that first barrier. And he got a degree, and my brother studied with student loans. And my dad really struggled a lot, to try. I mean, getting a student loan, you need to have someone to stand surety for that loan. So there's a vicious cycle of needing to be able to do something, but needing something first before you. It was just, But my dad made it happen, like I told you, with all his side hustles and whatever else. And it was Avinash. He left. He decided he's going to Johannesburg. He was working for, at the time, a pharmaceutical company. So he's a pharmacist by profession. And he left, but he's not practicing as a pharmacist, but he's the one we ask when we have any queries on pharmaceuticals. No, but so he left first, and it was so scary. I still remember when he came up. I'm not sure whether you're familiar with how Indian families go to the airport in Durban, but they really pack the whole family up and the pot of biryani.
To the airport.
The airport is quite far then. You would have not known about this, but the airport wasn't where it is today. It was further out past Chatsworth, down in a place called Prospecton, if I'm not mistaken. And we would travel quite a distance because Phoenix was in the north and this was in the south. So it was quite a distance.
So it was an outing.
It was an outing.
Yeah.
And then on the way back, you'd stop in Chatsworth to visit some family.
Okay.
Yeah, so you had to maximize that trip. So you're out there, and there was also this viewing deck, and my mom was a mess, and my brother left. And I must tell you that memory would be something that would be in my head. Because it's like, my brother's gone now.
Yeah.
But actually, my brother had broke through and challenged a status quo that no one else did in our entire family.
Yeah.
I think there's one more thing that's important to the story is that we were the underdogs of our bigger family unit.
I know that all too well.
Yeah, so my dad came from a very wealthy, so everyone did business. The business was the thing. And my dad did business with family, and the butchery that we had was with a family member. I'm going to stop there in case this gets heard beyond that. But there were family issues, and my dad lost the butchery, and we basically my dad was unemployed. There was no income. Our family had nothing, and then my dad's side hustle started. So we were already seen as people who were not good enough to be invited to things. And, And I don't know, but if I think about my siblings and if they had to like have an economic issue where they had financial constraints in their home, I just give them half of what I had. But no one did that with us. So my brother leaving was like a very big thing. So he was the first in the entire family to do this, and he was so brave. And I'm quite sure everyone thought he was going to fail because no one did it before. And my brother, I think he like broke open that pathway for us. And after that, the second brother went, and then the third brother, and then it was my turn to go. But to your question, sorry, I took very long to answer that. But what does that mean for me when I was leaving? I didn't leave with the intention of leaving and never coming back. From the time I was very
Mm,
little, I've always thought about how do I leave the spaces around me better. And I didn't know how to do that, whether that meant sharing my lunch with someone, whether it meant lending someone something if they didn't have it. I already did not have a lot. So whatever little I had, I would not tell my parents
yeah.
and I would try to share it on. So I did leave with the intention to say, I had someone create a pathway for me. I need to find a way to help everyone else. Not everyone's going to want to leave, but how do I create like this two-way channel where if things needed to come in, it
Mm,
could? Because I had a major stigma attached to me coming from Phoenix. I studied at University of Natal before it became UKZN. It was Howard College. It was a very prestigious university. I had every right to be there because
of
I
course you
worked
did.
very hard when I was in matric.
Yeah.
But there was this thing on my head because I was from Phoenix. Like it preceded you. Every time I'd walk into a room, people would be like, "Oh, you're from Phoenix. Open your
Mm,
mouth. Let me check how many gold teeth you have."
mm.
Or did you come here in a taxi? Or not that any of those things are bad things, but it was just that people just had this perception that
Box you.
nothing valuable could
Yeah.
come from those spaces. And last point, no one from the extended family lived there. It's weird though,
Mm.
because most of them lived in Chatsworth, so I don't know what the I really don't understand that. Yeah.
And when you got to Joburg, what did you do? Did you leave? So you studied in Natal, got to Joburg, and then you started working?
So there was a very I'm not sure whether we're going to talk about this, but there was a very defining moment that took place for me. I didn't have such a smooth exit out of Durban. So I had a personal issue which I feel like is necessary to speak about the challenges that I faced because it's a reality.
Yeah.
When I was 21, I came to Johannesburg when I was 22. And when I was 21, I happened to fall victim to a date rape, and which was very very complex for me, and I think like for many, because I'm within an Indian household. No one speaks about the topic at all. No one speaking about this. There was no informational stuff around me. I was friends with somebody who kind of condoned what had happened. She, I would find out later, was very instrumental in the spiking of my drink. um, so there were lots of different layers to what I was experiencing. I felt like I'd lost my friendship circle. I felt like I didn't know who to trust. I didn't know who to speak to. I mean, I came very many times during a 2.5 week period, close to taking my own life. I never did anything, but I'm talking about mentally coming to terms with the fact that this is something that would be the only way out. Um, so this was the December before I would turn 22, and it was a very tough time for me. I was also very afraid of the person who had done this, and his dad had links to the police. So his dad was part of the police force, but in like very senior category. So he's one of the police chiefs, if I'm not mistaken. So he already told me that if I had to even, not that I knew how I would even go about laying a charge. Where do you do that? I'm 21. I have no idea what that structure or the system is. I don't know who to ask. I'm definitely not going to speak to my parents. I'm definitely not going to speak to my brothers. And the friend that I had said that I'm being too sensitive and I'm being a prude. And I was like, those were exact words. And instead of creating a support around me. So now I have no one to fact check whether what had happened was what had happened. And I had no one to speak to. And that lack of information for me was really scary because I thought that was it, which was why I thought out was the only way to go, as in, I can't survive this. I mean, I can't believe I'm sitting here and talking about it. It's so great. I mean, if you think about the mindset of the person at the time, and not great in the sense that it happened, but great in the sense I can do something with it, and I can share this, and I can fearlessly share this, and I can sit here and speak about this as an Indian woman. And I keep stressing that because you go and show me how many Indian
It's a
women
taboo.
have spoken about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've got really great parents who, when I turned 28, I was able to tell them, and they supported me in speaking about this publicly because they felt like I needed to do this for other people. So I'm jumping around to answer your question. When I left Durban, I left on very bad circumstances. I left needing to finish my, so I had just completed my undergrad in accounting. I had just gotten my degree when this had happened. I just found out. I studied with student loans for 3 years. I was starting my life with a 60,000 Rand debt, which I was okay with because I was about to become a chartered accountant in my mind. I was so excited. I was going to move to Johannesburg to serve my articles. I was going to be a professional and I was going to follow my brother's path and. But then this would happen in December of that year. So I would find out I got my degree a few days difference between this happening. A degree didn't matter, nothing mattered. There was just nothing left in me. But I come to Johannesburg. I was very lucky, I think, in having a close relationship with my youngest brother, and I had spoken to him. The perpetrator who had done this was he disappeared. My brother did try to contact him, find him. It was reactive to the situation, but they couldn't find him. I didn't want anything. I just wanted this to have gone away because I didn't know how to navigate it, and that was my first touch point. And I came to Johannesburg, and I had a very, very difficult road when I got here. I mean, I had to deal with the healing of all of that, and that's a whole other podcast. So please definitely call me for that one, about that whole healing journey and having to work through trauma by yourself in a world where there's no one to talk to because you've got a mark. I've just got so many stigmas attached to me at this point. Leaving Phoenix, coming to a new city, being severely underweight because I was so like I didn't realize what I was doing to myself because I was so in my head during this time trying to navigate what had happened, and I was rapidly losing weight, and I was trying to secure articles and do a lot of things. And I'm happy to say that I got my articles. I served it for 3 years. I got my honors in accounting. I was one of two people in my firm to do it part time and actually pass. A lot of people fail their honors even when they're doing it full time. It's really, really tough. I never got my boards, but I did not want to become a chartered accountant. It's just never been something that I wanted. I've been running away from it my whole life. I've been an innovator. So even when I got feedback, I wrote my boards the first time, and the feedback they gave me was, "You really need to stay in the box." They told me, "You gave a really good answer, but it's not what we're looking for." So I knew that I was someone that wanted to create things, and despite my circumstances, and I hope that comes through, I really still pushed through, and I really wanted to make it not for me. I wanted to make it now for so many different groups of people that I felt like I was representing, and I was waiting for that right time to start telling other people about it. And hence my earlier comment about turning 28 and finally telling my parents with the intention to really use these negative experiences for
For
good.
change.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean,
Sorry, I didn't need to drop that.
No. It's not often that I don't know what to say, but I mean, the one thing that comes out so clearly is your fearless strength and your bravery and your courage. That is not easy, and I really, really commend you in terms of your entire journey. It's something that it is important to talk about, and it's yeah, I mean, congratulations for one, facing it, two, having the strength to get out of that, three, talking about it, and four, becoming such a phenomenal role model for many brown women, but all women, all young girls, all entrepreneurs, all working women that can look at your journey and commend you. So it's extremely admirable and it's extremely inspirational, and that just adds, another accolade on your long, very long list of all the things that you should be proud of. So I just wanna say that, and thank you for sharing. I know that's something that's also very personal, and it's not always easy to talk about. So I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, that just, it kind of makes sense in terms of the drive and the passion that I've seen in what I think is a very short period of a very long journey. And, when I first got to learn about who Ashmita was, I made a joke when I introduced you, but I mean, it was really around your party for change. I feel like it is so freaking cool what you did. And it was so cool how you were able to take something and make something out of it that completely aligns to everything that you said, which is giving back to the community, bringing it home, uplifting wherever you go, leaving it in a better state. So do you want to tell us about Party for Change, how that came about, what it was, and where it is now?
Okay. So coming up to Johannesburg not only opened my eyes to career opportunities and, and all the other things that come with being here, but I think also feeding off the trauma I was battling with, and as I said, it's for another podcast because I think it's important to talk about, is that I was also trying to find ways to run away from just facing the realities I was in. But again, it was a catalyst to really awesome things that came off it. So I found myself in the party part of Party for Change very quickly. And I had a group of friends that really enjoyed that environment. So we were partying, we were in clubs. And there was one thing that I was always very aware of. I was very aware that people would drink and just like throw their money up. I mean, we all know this visual of people, just throwing their money up.
Well, I was not in the clubs, just saying.
But you've seen
in case my mother's listening to this,
Not
no, I'm joking.
But I mean, you know the visual, right? Where people are like throwing the money, popping bottles, whatever. And I was like, people really like to spend their money when they are drunk.
Yeah.
Right? And I mean, the one thing that always stayed with me was, how could I leave things better?
Yeah.
So when I served my articles, I served it at a place called, at the time, Moers Roland, but now called Mazars. It's one of the top 10, I think, audit firms. And they were looking for a CSI initiative. So we didn't have the internet like back then, the way we have it now, where it's so at your fingertip and stuff. It was like the yellow pages, which you probably don't know what that is.
I know what the yellow pages are. You're not that much older than me.
So I went into what seemed like a directory of...
It is a directory.
We have a visitor. Should we tell this visitor to come and say hello?
Yes, that would be incredibly cool.
Hi. How are you guys?
Yeah, you look amazing.
Oh.
Where are you off to?
Oh. Hello.
Oh.
How are you, lovely ladies?
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Kill it.
Are you going to hang out with
Kendrick? I'm going to see Kendrick.
Okay.
Give us the information we need. Okay? Give us the info we need. I love you, Ash.
Love you too.
Bye.
So that's Shekinah, for anybody who doesn't know who she is, and I would be very surprised if you don't.
And she came in at quite an important time because actually I found her during Party for Change. that's how we formed our friendship. And so I found a place called Noah's Ark in Soweto, and what was like an online directory.
Yeah.
Very badly marketed. They didn't know how to list themselves, but they had 185 kids in here that needed basically to be maintained.
Mm-hmm.
And by that, if I didn't know what that meant until we went there. So I hooked up my firm to say, let's go and do like a Christmas party.
Yeah.
And that would be the beginning of a commitment that I would make to this place, and how Party for Change would start to be on my mind all the time, not knowing it would become Party for Change. So I saw what Helen was doing as the mother of this 185 kids at the space. And she told me that if she doesn't have enough funding, at the end of the day, when the sun goes down, she needs to send these kids back. And when I say back, I don't mean home. I mean to the streets.
Yeah.
And then they can come back during the day. There was no accommodation, but she didn't have enough to take care of them.
This is the reality.
Yeah, this is the reality. And I mean, the streets were not a good place to be from a safety perspective, but also, there was hygienically, and the kids were just sleeping. It was bad. Don't want to unpack that right now, but this reality was definitely there. So that's happening. And then I'm in a club and I'm watching people throw their money up, and I'm like, how can I take this money and put it where it needs to go? And that was just basically what was the underlying thing. During this time, we would party at Liquid Chefs. It was this bar in Rosebank. And I'm always thinking of ways to do things and networking. And I meet Shai Evian, who's the owner of Liquid Chefs at the time. And I say to him, give me your place. Actually, I told him, I think there's inefficiencies here. And I bet I can increase your revenue by 5%.
Yeah.
And that's how the conversation started. But we ended up talking about doing an event together. Now, Liquid Chefs doesn't have a door fee, so it's not a club. So I wanted him to levy a fee.
Yeah.
And I said, let's do something for very little and basically exploit these drunk people in a small way, but direct what they're doing to Noah's Ark and to the work that I was trying to do with them to find sustainability.
Yeah.
And basically he said, okay, let's do it. And then we started to brainstorm. So parties normally have names on their flyers, and that was literally it. We were brainstorming it, and we were having a party for 5 rand. and we decided to have a party for change. And that was how the brand was born, because actually we were partying
I love
for
it.
change.
Yeah.
5 Rand being the largest denomination.
Change and change.
And change.
Yeah.
So at night we would party, and you had to do it yourself because, as you know, no one's going to bank deposit money. So we were going to events and running the events with our manpower. And during the day, we would wake up and we would do the change part. So we were party and the change. And thank God I was very young then, so I didn't need that much sleep. So I was able to do both. And that was where it started. And Party for Change would basically start with Noah's Ark. We would raise enough funds to keep Noah's Ark open for a few months.
Yeah.
But what Party for Change also did was it became a vehicle that allowed people to be featured. And through that, we found a long-standing partnership with APSA. And
Wow.
APSA came on board and started to pump, I think, 25,000 a year into
Wow.
the site, which was
Great.
way more than they had. And it helped them stay open and provide 3 meals a day for the kids that they were only taking care of for 1 meal a day.
Good on you. Look at that.
Thanks. And I mean, it was the team, it was just everybody coming in and working on this. And to date, I mean, Party for Change is not active at the moment, but the brand still exists. If anybody out there wants to host a Party for Change event, we can. I mean, the mechanism is there, everything's in place. But basically, we wanted to find a way to connect every single event that was taking place in the country to a cause.
Yeah.
And we've worked with the Salvation Army. So we've worked with the homeless in Johannesburg on the streets. We did it ourselves. We would get on the streets, hand out things. We've worked very closely with the Rotary Club, who would then move a lot of... So we'd party, we'd make the money, and then we'd get all these partners would come on board who would also then funnel all of their resources. So we end up not just bringing the cash that we would raise, but it would also be this massive... inflow of support. Yeah. So ultimately we partied for a good, I think, 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, I saw all the photos on Facebook.
Yeah, sure you did. Yeah. Let's not go there. But I think what's important is at the time we didn't realize what we were doing.
Yeah.
But we basically, I think, I haven't counted everyone, but from a beneficiary perspective was well over 3,000 people.
Sure.
We had well over 100,000 people reach when it comes to people who were part, I mean, at minimum, people who contributed into it. It was non-cohesive.
Yeah.
We believed in that being the way to actually do good, because you'd still find out after you had a party and we exploited you, as I said, for that 5 Rand.
Yeah.
You find out the next day you contributed to this. And that was the cool part.
Yeah.
So you hanging the next day, not you, because you don't do these things. But someone would wake up the next morning and get an SMS from the club database that actually you contributed to this. Yeah, and that was basically, and it wasn't just about giving back, it was also about leaving the people who were in those spaces better than we found them, because ultimately what was happening was people were starting to become part of a community who understood the power of actually giving back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so cool because you don't often hear of it being a regular thing. You know, this wasn't like one event here, one event there. It was very consistent and very regular that you did this, right?
It was Friday, Saturday, Sunday, actually.
Every week.
Yeah.
For a long time. And I mean, I think that also feeds into, you know, the level of contentment and fulfillment that you get. You know, you're living your life, you're living your best life, but at the same time, you're always thinking about home.
Yep.
Thinking about your roots, thinking about where you come from and how you stay true to your values, you know, and things that you really care deeply about. And that's what I think, in my view, is going to make you extremely successful within your new venture.
I received that.
And, you know, I have a Party for Change t-shirt
at
home. Yeah, it's my husband's. I don't wear it.
Okay,
no.
okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. I didn't expect it to end in that way.
But let's rebrand and use it.
Sure.
But I mean, I know we've spoken about how we incorporate a similar model to Party for Change inside of SwapVend, right? So, okay, cool. So you left Durbs, got to Joburg, served your articles, got involved with all these cool initiatives, and then walk us through your corporate journey.
Yeah, it was quite the journey, hey? So it was 3 years of articles at Mazars. I was then moved into a supervisor role and a manager role. So basically that meant taking care of clients and taking care of teams.
Yeah.
I mean, being the meek little person who came in, I was quite proud that I was able to do that, to get to that point.
Dynamite in a small package.
Yeah.
Like masala dynamite from Durban.
Yeah. The original one. Garam masala. And I then left. I was headhunted by a client who I actually was the auditor, and they they gave me a sign-on bonus of a Louis Vuitton handbag. They took me to the store and they purchased the bag, so I know it's real. Before anyone questions me, is it real? And anyway, I'm thinking funny story. I went back to Louis Vuitton the other day to have it repaired, and they said I must stand outside the store. They came and spoke to me outside because they were regulating the amount of people shopping at the time, and said if I need the bag repaired, it needs to be flown to Paris.
Wow.
I'm going to repair this bag down the road. I'm not going to pay for that bag going back to Paris. But anyway.
Just send it to my mother. My mom can do it for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk after this.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'm going to get the bag back from you just to make sure. So I worked at a company called Sayas Corporation, and I was the financial manager. Very big achievement for me.
Yeah.
Especially
you made it.
I made it. So I made it. I had a red Mini Cooper S with black stripes on it. It was one of
So Durban girl coming to Joburg, starter pack. Got it.
Let me tell you, when I came up, I did not have my license and I couldn't drive. And I kept failing my license because I was under so much pressure to get it, because I was told by the managing partner that if I don't come to the office to do my timesheets, they were going to let me go out of my contract because they needed to bill clients. My problem was I was reliant on other people to drive me to work. And in order for me to get to town, I would have had to take 2 taxis. I do not know the taxi circuit in Johannesburg. It was not like Phoenix.
It's not the same, yeah.
It's not the same. It's not like Durban. You are going into CBD and you've got to go to another rank. And I couldn't do that. I was too scared. And everyone that I knew was traveling through were getting their laptop stolen.
Yeah.
So I was not ready for this. And I had a lot of challenges not having a car. And I finally got my license. It was very big. It was a very big achievement on my 5th try. And I bought a Corsa. Not a light.
The bubble.
I bought a Corsa GLE.
Oh, wow.
It was very fancy.
Was it white?
It was white. It was white. And it was so fancy. And I always got dressed really nicely for work. And one day, I jumped out of the car and I put my foot down and I saw a black print. And I realized the car was
leaking oil.
Oil was not outside the car, into the floor of the car. So at the time, I was still living with my parents, and my dad would wake up every morning. My dad's such a great person, eh? He would wake up every morning and he would put newspaper,
Aww.
so that I wouldn't mess my shoes.
Papa Singh.
So the
Sweet
car
man.
was constantly black with oil on the inside. And that's why I'm saying when I got my Mini Cooper, it was definitely a step
level up.
Yeah, it was a level up. There was no oil inside the car. Unless it was supposed to be where it was supposed to be.
You couldn't be an oily financial manager.
No, I couldn't.
No. Yeah.
There's a lot of oily financial managers, let me just tell you. Yeah, so I was at Sayas. I was there as financial manager. It was a small firm of 140 people, but it was a really cool firm. They were building really cool software for mines and stuff. And instead of being the financial manager, I would always be sitting with the consultants, listening to how they were solving problems. I was always very keen on listening to cool ways to do new things. Now, bear in mind, I'm working for a tech company in 2011 and 2012. It's not what it was like today. So it was very cool. There was a lot of like logic creation. So I was very exposed to that. But while I was there, I managed to secure a job at my dream company where I always wanted to work. I wanted to work for the South African breweries, SAB. And I managed to get in.
And why? Why is that?
So when I was in university, SAB would come and do these career days.
Okay.
And they had a lot of budget. So they would really come and be very loud. And I mean, SAB was voted employer of the year after year after year at the time. So everyone wanted to be a part of this. And
it was a pinnacle.
Yeah, and especially being exposed to my dad, who never actually had like a big company that he belonged to with benefits. And I saw the other side of not being in a corporate. And I saw financial instability. And
You just wanted the medical aid.
Hey, I wanted the medical aid and pension. But I also wanted a year in function. It sounds silly, but my dad never went to a year in function. Like, he never got dressed up and jumped in a car. And he didn't have that structure that I so wanted, because I was a very structured person, waking up at 5 a.m. playing chess before I started my work day, getting to school to my school day, carrying the teacher's bag. So I had a great deal of structure in my life compared to my dad. It was so weird because at that time it was the most unappealing thing. And now, I mean, entrepreneurship is the thing that defines me. I mean, I love that because it's not about other people imposing structure. It's about building what structure means to you.
Yes.
And having that.
And using it to solve a problem.
Using it to solve a problem. And I then left. Then I went to work for SAB, my dream company. And here's where it got interesting. I thought I was going to work in Sandton in the tower. But I actually had to pass one toll road, sorry, and another to go to another site to work at a depot. called
Okay.
Wadeville Depot.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know what's Wadeville, do you?
I do know
Do
what
you? Oh my
Wadeville
God.
is.
Okay, why? You know that? It was the first time I saw Wadeville when I got there. And I would drive from Four Ways, where I was living, all the way to Wadeville. And I would sit there and be like, what am I doing? And I decided I'm going to still be who I am. And I'm going to go and do the financial things that I was getting paid well and stuff. That was not the issue. It was just, aren't I supposed to be in the glass
Why
box?
am I not in a bougie 10th floor building?
Getting coffee in the morning, you know, this American career progression story. But let me tell you something.
Yeah.
It was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Yeah.
Because it taught me the importance of understanding how things operated.
Yeah,
before
from the
you-
ground up.
Yeah, from the ground up. And do you know what I would do? I'd sit on my desk and look outside because the depot was out my window. And I would watch the trucks moving around during the day, and I would figure out what they were doing wrong, where the inefficiencies were coming from. So I've got a very keen eye when it comes to actually understanding how things work and why they work that way. I may not be able to solve it like technically, but I could solve it
identify it.
logically,
Yeah.
practically. And I got exposed to the business on the inside, and that would become like the foundation for the next 4 years of my life at SAB. I would be promoted every single year. Like I said earlier, I was not a chartered accountant. I'm still not, but I would have a whole lot of chartered accountants report to me, and it was a big achievement for someone.
Hey,
who
this girl from Phoenix.
who didn't get the board exam either. Yeah. So, and the girl
How
from
many times
Phoenix-
did you write your board exam?
I wrote it once, and I went to write it the second time.
Yeah.
And we would write it at Gallagher Estate in Midrand.
Mm-hmm.
There's a story that Priya and I will tell you later about how nervous I was. But anyway, the second time I would drive there, I would decide that I'm not putting myself through this. It's an 8-hour exam for 2 days.
Sure.
And I mean, I saw a guy vomit next to my car going in. So I turned my car around and drove to my parents'
No
house.
ways.
And I said, I will not have CASA at the end of my name.
Yeah.
I think the one thing that I do know about myself, because you could view that, one person's going to view that as not being resilient. I view that as knowing what I'm good at and focusing on my strengths. And then why force myself to fulfill someone else's dream when I can I felt like I needed to do stuff, and I was just getting caught up on this exam just so that I could tell other people I'm a chartered accountant, because it came down to that. I wasn't pursuing this other than really about the status and financial stability from that perspective. But I knew that if I was true to myself and I pushed through on my own dreams, and if I put myself out there and worked hard and do the things that I love, then that was going to be, it was going to be a success either way. And I like to believe I'm testament to that fact that I didn't push through like some of the people who wrote this exam 5 times and failed at the end of it or got it at the end of it. I don't know if that was worth it. I just knew when to give up. So the fact that I'm still going with some of the things I'm working on now, like really pushing SwapVend, I know what can and cannot survive. I know when to give up. And I know that we need to keep going with everything that's currently happening.
I don't think it's I don't think that you gave up on it. I think that you made a decision based on what you wanted and how you wanted to grow, and you pivoted and you changed course. And I think that's very different to giving up, right? So, and I definitely think that you're a testament that you don't have to become a CA, or you don't have to, you don't have to continue on a path that you feel and know is not the right path anymore, and I think that can be powerful in its own right. And I mean, some stories are differ a little bit. I mean, I'll tell you mine. I was also going to go study to become a CA because my sister's a CA, and my sister did it as like a bombshell. So she, studied and worked, and she did it part-time. She finished in like 3 years or something crazy. And then she ended up being like, the poster child of the family. And our background is also, we were also the underdogs amongst our wider family for
our
other
friendship
reasons.
is really making a lot of sense now.
So we were always looked down upon. We were less likely to succeed. My mom's children were never going to be the ones that made it, and we were wild and whatever else. And so my sister did it, and she broke a barrier. And then my brother ended up doing something slightly different. He ended up in the tech space. And then I came along, and I'm just like, so I'm just going to go get a belly ring and some tattoos and pierce my nose and, dye my hair red, because I was born in a different generation. And I grew up.
My hair was also red, Miranda. This is very, very scary. Sorry for interrupting.
We grew up in a different generation that I think we were also influenced by a generation that taught us that, being rigid and following this path. So you go to school, you finish school, you study, you work, you get married, you have babies, and then maybe you stay at home and your husband looks after you. And I mean, I think that is very influenced by society, our upbringing, the community that we're raised within, the fact that, you know, the Indian values are very strict, very firm, and there is no room for freedom and flexibility. Like, why do you want to own your own time? Your time is not yours. Your time belongs to your employer, and you will be there for 50 years, you know? And I think now it's like there's a difference, you know? And I rode that wave because, you know, I got away with studying media and TV and PR, and that was after being told, no, I couldn't study to become an actress. You know, because that's actually what I wanted to do. And my mom said no. And I had to, you know, just be respectful, maintain the course. And then the reason that I did it was because I just needed a piece of paper.
Yeah.
I was already working.
Yeah.
I was already in a hustle. I was already moving to my next steps. I was really trying to build something for myself, but I also had, you know, a lot of responsibility put on me. And those different factors in your life end up influencing your journey and, you know, how you navigate it and move on to different phases in your life. And, you know, today I sit here and I don't have a degree. My highest education is a diploma in media practice, although I was the top graduate.
I am so happy with all the choices you made because it brought you here. And
exactly. So I really do feel that whilst it is very important and would always encourage, you know, to take on a tertiary education and get your degree and learn, there are other ways to learn and to grow and to become successful, you know. So you are a testament to that.
Thank you. I wrote poetry in school and I wanted to become a writer, and my dad laughed at me. My family said, no, you can become a writer as a hobby.
Part-time, as a hobby.
And I could have been a child phenomenon writing stuff and nobody listened about look at this creative stuff.
Yeah.
My thing is always this. Imagine if Michael Jackson went to study finance. You know what I mean? Imagine. So
I've never heard that one before, but exactly. Yeah. I think there's always a space for many different things. Okay, cool. So you were at SAB and then you moved into a nonprofit, and then into your founder journey. Walk us through that transition because
So SAB got taken over by AB InBev, and I decided to stay because I'm always up for a challenge.
Yeah.
And then I lost my team twice because they were taking these payouts to leave and I didn't want to leave, and eventually I had like huge moral incongruence with AB InBev as an employer versus SAB. And I think what's key is that even while I was at SAB with the finance hat on, I was always finding ways to develop people.
Yeah.
So I had challenged what they had at the time, the owner-driver. They had an owner-driver scheme where they were taking drivers who were on the payroll, releasing them and setting them up in their own businesses and then contracting them back. It was such a cool idea.
Yeah.
Needless to say, I had very, very itchy hands and feet and I wanted to figure out what was happening. But at the sites that I was at, I realized my owner drivers were really, really failing. And I couldn't understand this because they were getting incubated, they were getting assistance from SAB. What was happening? So what I started to do was pretend like there was something wrong with my office, and I'd sit in the boardroom and they would sit with their independent business advisors. I was allowed to do that, by the way. I just wasn't allowed to get involved.
Participate.
And I would listen to what was happening. And I realized that these guys didn't know what they didn't know. So I started to work on my own on an owner-driver training. Now, don't get me wrong, SAB had an owner-driver training. But I'm not sure, and with much respect to them because they also admitted this, whether the owner-drivers had an opportunity to be asked if this training was impacting them or whether anyone was checking. And owner-drivers, when they were not succeeding, were getting fired or they were getting let go. Their contracts were obviously in breach. So there was this vicious cycle that the SAB was trying to put them into this like an emancipated position, and they were failing in this thing. So it was actually not achieving anyone's outcomes. So I developed my own training. I developed this training, which was this owner-driver training, which spoke to how do your activities, how do your actions equate to your financial position? And I did it in a very basic way. And I trained 6 drivers as a start. And all these guys moved into a profit-making position. And there was one guy, David, who came with me to speak to the Financial Directors Committee. And after this, it was a big deal. And, especially in corporate, we're speaking to the FD of Africa, Matt Dunn, who's still a very dear friend and mentor. And we sat in front of 19 people. And David and I were walking in and he was about to tell them what his journey was. And I said, David, don't be anxious. And he said, there's no need to be anxious when I'm telling the truth.
Yeah.
And he came in, I should take his advice. He came in and he told them what this training had done. They were so impressed with the training at the time. And I was so excited because this wasn't about me. This was about how this could really empower these small businesses.
Yeah, exactly.
So they decided to roll it out across the region to about 50 drivers. And then they subsequently, in my absence, rolled it out across the country. So this was training that I'm not sure what the stats were. I didn't check by the time that I'd left, but I had the opportunity to roll out some really great development work in my capacity as FM, even though that had nothing to do with my position. So I was constantly still in that mindset, running Party for Change on one side, doing this owner driver thing on the other side, and saying, okay, how can I also raise my team? As I mentioned to you, I had a whole big team that sat on my side as well. So I was constantly thinking about development all the time, and that passion was burning.
Yeah.
So when the time came with that moral incongruence with my employer, I left with the intention to take some time off because they had given me a payout. And then I had a really great opportunity knock on the door. So Youth Employment Services was a presidentially sanctioned employment vehicle that Cyril, our president, Ramaphosa, had announced at the SONA. And interestingly enough, when he announced this a year before, I told my dad while eating something at their house, oh, I think I should be running this thing. I said, I know employment because the vehicle was really cool. They were using corporate to solve a social problem.
Yeah.
So they had like a board of corporate CEOs.
Almost like a digital taxi, but it's not.
Like really connecting the sectors, right? So this was really cool that they had this thing set up and they were like, here's a social problem. You guys from this sector come and figure out how to do this thing.
Yeah.
And they were like, okay, cool. And I thought, this is like right up my alley. And a year later, I would get called in for an interview where they would interview me to be their chief operations officer. And I would go in as both COO and acting CFO. And I would work directly with the board was directly reporting into the president. And I would have a front row seat to the employment crisis. And not only the employment crisis, but also solutions that we're trying to solve, that were being implemented to solve the economic disparities and all the other issues. Because YES wasn't just trying to work on its own, but really trying to like work with other people who were trying to create economic stabilization and entry points. And sitting there, I would see this massive investment going into it, and really, really awesome being in this very agile space and being able to witness the size of the problem, but also witnessing the problem with the solutions. And that I think was really, really like eye-opening for me, because you on the outside and you think, oh, government has put this thing in place. And I'm not being naive. I do know that a lot of government interventions don't necessarily work.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of money being pushed into things.
Yeah.
And when you're at the center of these things,
you see the value.
You see what is actually happening. And I'm not pointing a finger at the people who wrote the gazettes and did the stuff. I do think it was a very, very smart thing that they were trying to do by bringing these sectors together. But I still think we were missing the point at which the problem needed to actually be solved at. And it really got me thinking a lot. I was there for a bit and then I would leave because that entrepreneur flame in me was out of control.
Yeah.
So I would leave and I would establish my own company at the time. I started a consulting firm called Refresh Africa. And the intention was really to work with small businesses. Well, work with everyone, work with brands, but I ended up working with a lot of small businesses because I really loved that so much, helping people, empowering people, building strategies for them. I didn't always have all the answers, but I knew how to like get access to things and leverage my network.
Leverage your network, yeah
to do that. And that was the year that I would really do a lot of thinking on the employment issue or the unemployment crisis, small business entry into market. I know a lot of people on their gap year are probably touring Europe, but I really felt like I needed a break.
Yeah.
To just stand still. And it was so weird. The first moment I stood still, I felt like, wait a minute, I think I know how to do this. And the aim was always to build tools, which I was doing my entire life. But the aim was always to build a sustainable tool and a scalable tool. And I finally felt like I had this aha moment.
Big idea for big problems.
Yeah, and it all came at 3 a.m. in the morning while I was sleeping. And I was just like, God, thank you so much. And the first thing I did was go and buy a whiteboard the next morning. I felt like I needed to extract what was in my head. And I had no idea where to go. I was just like, oh my God, now what? Because I've got this really cool idea and I'm not sure what to do with it. And I wish I met you then. It's okay.
This was 3 years ago, hey?
4 years ago.
4 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's fine. did some work and got us here, but I mean, it was faster there, hey? But yeah, and at that time, I just started, I didn't know what I didn't know,
Yeah.
which was quite interesting because here I am, this very seasoned person when it comes to understanding the corporate sector, massive networks of people, access to things. I mean, I got a payout, I told you,
Yeah.
I had a car, I had data, I lived in Sandton, I had connectivity, I had fiber. What else? You name it, I had it. But I didn't know what to do. And I mean, I was starting off as a female, as a brown female, if any for the audio here, and I was starting off from what you would think would not be a back foot, right? Because
Yeah.
there's a lot of female
Yeah, you're
driven
starting off
initiatives.
strong
Yeah,
from a perceptive perspective.
and I'm thinking, okay, this will be easy. There's
Yeah.
lots of women funds. There's a lot of focus on really like incubating like female-led businesses.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of different government initiatives. At the time, one of my sister-in-laws was actually a deputy director at the Department of Trade and Industry.
Sure.
And there were 2 major grants at the time that I was going after.
Yeah.
Despite my sister-in-law even being at the DTI, me and her battled to fill out the grant form. The form was so comprehensive, Miranda. I tell you, it was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do in my life. And I passed my honors in accounting.
Yeah.
And I couldn't fill out a
Yes.
grant, a democratic grant
Yeah.
that was there for anyone to access.
And was it in English?
It was in English, yes. And
Yeah.
it was in English.
Mm-hmm.
And it was in an English that was so complex that as an English speaking person,
Yes.
I found a challenge.
Yeah.
And it was in Excel. It was an Excel based document. So the document also was massive. So you really needed to have a high powered device.
Mm-hmm.
Now imagine if I was using and I was using my computer to do this. Imagine if I was using a phone and
You didn't speak English as your native.
yeah, and I've never tried to, and I must go check this actually. I never tried to open the document on my phone, so I don't know if it was
If it would open or
if it would open or what the interface would be like.
Yeah.
So I didn't fill in the form. I didn't go for the grant. I gave up before I even started the process.
Yeah.
And that grant was for me. I
Yeah.
met all the criteria.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was
High barrier.
That was my barrier as a startup.
And what happened? I mean, like, so you thought about this idea, you mapped it out on your whiteboard. Who were the partners that supported you? How did you get it to where it is right now? What were some of the things that you worked on? And tell us, like, explain what at the time you mapped this out to be. And this is incredible. Thank you. This is Ashmita. Oh, it should say Ashmita, right?
No, this says Ashmita, and it
also
says that I rock.
Thanks. Thank you. Coffee break because, coffee is life. This is a iced caramel latte.
Pri, can I ask you to open
Thank
this
you.
because I'm so scared that I'm going to drop it. Thank you. Thank you.
It's just a tea. Some
Perfect.
strange sounding name.
Thank you. That looks so great.
This is incredible.
This is also incredible, believe it or not.
Very nice, thank you. Yeah, so I mean, like, when you and I first started talking, and I looked at this, and I'm not going to tell the story, you can tell the story, but it was, it started off as something very specific.
Yeah.
It evolved into something slightly different, but maintained the core principles. And now it's become something that, I think has such big legs. But anyway, we'll get to that in a bit. What was that journey like for you? What are some of the challenges that you face? I know you talk about that big barrier, and I think that it is a very big problem because we should be leveraging access to available funding
100%.
or support if it's there. It's meant for us, but how do we get that, right? That is a very big one. How did you navigate this period of your life? And how did you continue, the fight within yourself, keep the flame alive,
Big fight,
to hold on to this as something that is going to take off, come what may.
So I think I'm just going to speak in chronological order and try and move through it as succinctly as possible. To answer your question, I didn't know where to go. I think at the very beginning, it was my whiteboard and I sat there. And the first big fear I had was actually talking to the wrong people. And I'll tell you why. I was scared. There's a lot of opportunity to build SwapVend really quickly if you build it
100%.
for the incorrect market,
Yes.
or if you build it from an incorrect perspective.
Or you can't
Incorrect for me.
execute it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And incorrect for what we're trying to achieve. It was very easy to take the solution to market, is my point. And I was terrified to talk to the wrong person because I felt like the wrong person was going to build it, and like other solutions, it would end up not solving the problem, or it would end up becoming more of a deterrence. Because there's a lot of perception that there's all these solutions, but when you really get to the core of it, you see that actually it's not even playing in the right space.
Yeah.
So the first thing was my fear to just speak to anyone. I know nothing about tech. I know nothing about, I didn't know where to start. So I read, believe it or not, I bought a book by Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, and it was called Hitting Refresh, because my business was called Refresh. I studied what he said because he was talking about inclusive technologies. So I managed to get time with Microsoft in Johannesburg, and I pitched SwapVend to them. And it was so interesting because I took their CEO's book to show them why SwapVend spoke to the agenda that they had.
Yeah.
And they told me, go build a prototype and come back. And I was just like, but wait, I'm telling you, I don't have the resources. So it was, I mean, I don't want to close that door because they did say come back. But it was interesting how there was another barrier.
So to Microsoft, we're on our way.
Yeah, I remember you saying that you would give me cloud infrastructure. So that was that. And I mean, firstly, I just wanted to, I took my own whiteboard. I took my own pens. I got dressed.
To your meeting.
Yeah. Because I said, I need to be prepared.
Yeah.
I took the book. It had tabs on it because I wanted to reference it. I was not going to go in there and speak from a point of ignorance. I wanted to make sure I respected the time of the people.
100%.
That they were giving me their own time, and I wanted to be there and utilize it and maximize it. I started off by doing that, going cold into boardrooms, trying to figure out who to talk to, here's my vision, help me bring it to reality. And then I would go to technology innovation agency who asked me to do the research. And the research was, I didn't understand. We all know the unemployment crisis. We all understand the barriers to entry in the economy.
Yeah.
Why did you want me to spend time researching this when I'm bringing you a solution? So, I mean, I could sit here and we spend the whole day telling you about how many boardrooms I walked into.
Yeah.
But basically, it all had the same outcome.
Yeah.
Go figure this out first.
Yeah. Get some traction and come back.
Yeah, isn't this like when you are trying to get a new job and they say, but you need experience?
Experience, exactly.
Yeah, this was the
100%.
same story.
Yeah.
So here I am trying to solve a problem in this emerging market that I live in. And it's not even my problem to solve if you want to really get technical. I'm going to government agencies. I went to the DTI. They had money and they asked me to build an app for Fashion Week. I said, no, I'm not an app developer. I'm coming here with a solution, you know? And it was like, so there were so many different conversations and all of them were just dead ends. And it was really demotivating to your point. How do you keep that fire going?
Yeah.
And I was getting dressed with the heels, started to become sneakers and started to become sweats. And I started to kind of sink into my own skin. And I was like, you know what? If I'm going to do this, I need to access people in my immediate network and figure out if there are people here who can support me. Don't get me wrong. Some of that worked. Some of that went horribly wrong. But everything was about failing forward. You know, just thinking about every single part now when I look back had a very important contribution to where it is right now. And it hasn't been a straight road.
Yeah.
And I spoke to a friend of mine.
It never is.
Yeah. He introduced me to someone who was in the space doing all these very different interventions. And this guy tells me, I've got a development company in the US. And I'm like super excited. I'm the most naive at this point. I'm just looking for anybody who will buy into me. 8 hours after making this guy sign an NDA, I was sitting at design quarter. 8 hours, my friend. We sat and I pitched the whole thing to him. I basically gave him everything.
Yeah.
And I said, let's build this thing. I would spend the next 3 or 4 months knowing that they are busy building. And I'd find out actually they were never building. And sure, I don't want to go into the details, but I almost lost a lot of money in that process. And God has been so good to me because I know people who have lost money to developers who were not actually doing anything. At this point, needless to say, I was defeated because I was just like, how am I not going to let this happen again?
Yeah.
And because I didn't know what I did wrong the first time to know what to do the second time. And what I had done at this point, I thought, okay, let me do the things that I know how to do. So I've mapped this out on paper. And by the way, I used my cell phone and I just took white paper and I drew my cell phone outlines. and I drew my screens myself.
You built your user journey.
Yeah, I built my user journey, not knowing I was doing that. So I was literally saying, this is how it needs to function.
Yeah.
How do I make it simple? And I had color pencils and I had all these different things and I colored it in and I said, this is the palette. This is how it needs to look. This is how it should flow.
Yeah.
And I'm not good at drawing, by the way, so that needs to be known. So I did this whole thing and I decided, you know what, let me try and secure the most important thing. And that would be the deployment, the access point. Because getting access to the informal sector, getting access into townships is very difficult. So I heard about these guys called the Safe Hub because they build infrastructure in townships. And I said, I do need a partner who has physical infrastructure because access is an issue when it comes to both physical access, connectivity, and also digital access. So how do I do all of these things? And I realized the best way to do this is to find someone already anchored in that space.
Yes.
So I went to visit the Safe Hub. This was back in 2019.
Okay.
And I took my whiteboard. I took my whiteboard and all my stuff with me. And I go and I meet with the MD at the time, well, still the MD till today. I meet with him and he's really excited about SwapVend. And I go there to ask him to be an implementation partner. So I secure that. I secure the deal with them as an implementation partner, but I also get a job. So they offer me the ops director role for the Safe Hubs. And at the time, there were 3 of them that existed. And they were in Khayelitsha, Gugulethu, and Diepsloot, 3 major townships in South Africa. And I got really excited because they had a lot more sites coming live in the next few months in other townships. And for me, I felt, because I'm always desiring to learn and I also want to test things, I thought, how about spending some time really getting to know? So I got to know the unemployment crisis from a distant view, from a very macro view.
Yeah,
at Yes. Now I'm going to get the opportunity to see it purely
deep dive, hands-on.
Yeah, in the informal sector, inside a township. And I was really excited. I was back in the depot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You were back in Phoenix.
I was back in Phoenix.
Yeah.
And I was going to get some like one-on-one information straight up. And I was really excited about that. So I took the job with both hands and I jumped right in. And while busy learning about the local economic development landscape and understanding things, I got to understand how people interacted. But here's another place where I got to understand the deployment of solutions. I knew what was coming into the space. And I'm not talking about the Safe Hub. I'm talking about all the other solutions, the NYDA bringing solutions. You know, there's all these different channels that government has been funneling funding into. Again, not that they are not working. They are working. They are doing what they need to do, but it's not happening at scale. The problem is scaling.
It's mass adoption.
Yeah. So with that being said, I once again had a front row seat to the problem and such an intimate engagement with the problem. Because now I went to actually being on the ground, front facing. And at this point, we're sitting with 9 townships that I'm currently operating in through the Safe Hub. And I've got access to 9 different sets of problems. And with Phoenix, 10.
Yeah.
And we're looking at within the next few months to have that at 16 different locations.
Incredible.
So at 16 different locations gives me a base of potentially 100,000 at the minimum captured audience that we are looking at. And while all of this is playing out, I am busy with so it starts with the name Exchange, which is why I did that. It started with the name Exchange. The reason why at some point I decided I needed to change it was because I went to buy the domain and the domain was 700,000 rand because of Microsoft Exchange. But it also dawned on me that Exchange was going to be too limiting to what we were doing, but also the fact that I knew something needed to be worked on. I just didn't know at the time that it needed to be SwapVend. And that's what its name is today, the solution, and it's in my heart. It's right. It's an alignment. So I'm at the Safe Hub. We are busy unpacking this. We are busy learning. And the Safe Hub and I are busy determining what is how are we going to formalize our relationship.
Yeah.
And as we get more footprint and as we get more captured audience, I realize the best place to position is now coming back to the original ask, but now at a much broader.
Yeah.
And I'm happy I didn't sign that deal at the beginning because it gave me access to it more. And Safe Hub came on board because they understood the vision, they believed in it. And I mean, I suppose that's also testament to the solution because they also saw the importance for this and the deployment.
It's solving
of it. Solving a problem. And here we are with the deal with the Safe Hub to give me access to all 16 sites and access to all captured audiences to be able to deploy the solution. So I'm happy to sit here and say that when the solution is ready to be deployed, it will be deployed into the right hands.
Yeah.
And through the right channel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it also gives an additional layer of confidence in what you're building,
Yeah.
given the fact that you are so hands-on and engaged on a daily basis across the country, directly into the target market.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So just like explain a bit more around what SwapVend is. What is it designed to do? So we spoke through, your journey specifically, how you got to where you are, the access that you have today,
Yeah.
and your ability to understand these problems, look at how solutions are built, and meet that in the middle
Yeah.
through now a product. What is SwapVend?
So SwapVend, by definition, is an ecosystem platform. So it's made up of various things that come together in a very, very smart and intentional way, because that's important. Because there's lots of ecosystem platforms that exist, but it's all about how they interplay. But it's basically an ecosystem platform that connects the informal and formal sectors to one another with the intention to leverage cross-sector value at its very core. And the importance is that we define value within this ecosystem as both qualitative and quantitative. Because a lot of solutions are giving you the option to either trade in it or it is a learning platform, but those things don't come together to actually give you either a real life experience or give you targeted learning. So there's a lot of different incubations. Let's use that as an example. Incubation programs that are deployed, and I see it firsthand. Like I mentioned, being in the front row again, and there's just like a mass participation of people who come in different points in their journey, different base knowledge, different maturities on their businesses, a very different perception of where they think their business is versus where the business actually is. A whole lot of things that play into them receiving all this information, signing a register, someone meeting a KPI, CSI spent,
And then
impact made,
Yeah, exactly.
impact made, and that entrepreneur is back in the same place.
Exactly.
And maybe someone is benefiting, maybe 10 people are benefiting, maybe 20, but it's all about, okay, we're going to hit a pool of 100 people, someone's going to get helped.
Yeah.
And that is not going to answer it. So in the SwapVend environment, we believe in really creating tailored journeys for people, understanding where people are at, and being able to do that at scale, and taking people on a non-coercive journey. Because I think understanding the dynamics of people and how they actually operate in reality is very important. And as SwapVend, as a company, underpinned, our values are underpinning us. And that's really speaking to thinking about creating tools that empower and enable human dignity, because that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
All the other
Agree.
things are really nice to have.
Yeah.
But giving people the ability to buy a bar of soap, toothpaste, something to eat. I know it sounds so granular, but it's the reality. And understanding that we need to meet people where we find them is very important to us. So humanizing interactions is important. We understand the importance of there being I'm saying we, like we are 100 people, but you got to speak these things into existence. But we understand the importance of tech and the power of scaling things, because you can't scale if you're going to continue doing things where we're anchoring people to a physical space. The reality is that we need something digitally in the market, but we also understand that there is a massive digital divide and that we need to think about that realistically, not on paper. And I think that's what SwapVend has also considered in its design, and core to its very product solution is that hybrid deployment of the solution.
Yeah, I mean, it's very valid what you're saying. I mean, I've often been in conversations, and a lot recently, where the financial inclusion, financial access, making change, driving impacts, all used as buzzwords. And I think sometimes the market gets so caught up in the narrative that this has to be so disruptive in order for it to get traction. And that means it must be built on blockchain, and it must use a whole bunch of AI stuff. And, you find that there is just a lack of usage, a lack of uptake, and eventually those businesses don't take off the way people think. And that is because sometimes we tend to over engineer in very simple types of markets. So in South Africa, for example, yes, it is a highly banked market. Yes, it is seen as a developed market relative to the rest of the continent, but we do have largest wealth disparity. Our problems are very big.
Yes, they are.
the reality is that even if you are a high earner in the country, you're sitting for 8, 10, 12 hours a day without electricity. And in those some of those cases, you are not buying solar for your home because you don't own your home.
Yeah.
Right? And when you take that reality into like deep into our market and you look at the sector that you are catering to, which is the informal communities, informal sectors, townships, and the many, many thousands of merchants that sit within these environments, the opportunity for scale and adoption and usage, but value is very, very high.
Yes.
Right? One barrier I think that we would need to think very clearly around is how do we encourage and educate on the potential value of utilizing it? And it's something that, in our few conversations, we do get asked. And that is because of, the tainted perception that fintech is one thing. And in order for this thing to take off, it needs to tick 1, 2, 3 boxes.
Yeah.
And the reality is very different.
Yeah.
The reality is this may be something that is so basic in principle. Yes, it is underpinned by some sort of technology that's delivered via a mobile device,
Yes.
but you're deploying through physical infrastructure within these township communities to maintain that touch point.
Yeah.
But you're also creating something that you can pick out of South Africa
Correct.
and deploy in another country,
Correct.
which is extremely powerful.
Yeah.
So with your experience and stuff, and you work with these business owners, and they range in terms of age. Some are young, some are old, some are not business owners, but they're people that deserve access and opportunity, right? And you're building this and you're creating this. How do you see it taking off? So yes, you've got the rails. We're in the process of building the tech. We've got a strong, go-to-market strategy. Yes. You've got your deployment infrastructure. What happens then? And in your view, how do you make sure what you're envisioning in your head, what you've prototyped on paper, what you drew, with your color pencils, and now what we're building, and how that gets deployed to the infrastructure that you've secured? How does that actually become successful? And how does it meet what you intend for this to do?
Yeah. Okay. So firstly, whatever's in my head, I'm going to try to put into practice for it to work. And if it doesn't work, I will never stop trying. And I think that's one thing that's very important, is that if I'm proven wrong when I am deploying, I will keep problem solving until we get it right. So that is something that is so deep within the solution, is that we're going to keep trying until we get this right. That was just a character answer. But nothing frustrates me more, and I can't explain this, when I'm driving through, whether it's Sandton and I see these guys on the side of the road trying to trade. Let's just stay on the trading point, on the business owner point. Or when I'm driving through a township getting to work, it was just 2 days ago and I was in Alexandra, and I saw all these different merchants on the side of the street, and I'm just like, oh, I wish I could just give them something, because they're already trading. They just need access to market.
Yes.
They have every right. The products, their quality deserves to be competing for disposable
inside of
income.
A formal.
Yes. Yeah. They deserve it. And there's people want to access them. And I even asked the Uber driver stop, because I've been looking for this really simple black belt, and I saw it hanging there. And the Uber driver didn't want to stop. He says that this is a very dangerous part, and it is a dangerous part. And then what then for the people who are there, And I mean, I know they've got their walkthroughs who are going to access them, but they deserve so much more. So to come back to what you asked, with all of this aside, and without my personal feelings, what we've designed is very, very intentional, in the sense that we have a hybrid rollout. And I think using the Safe Hub, the important thing is, it's not about teaching people the value. It's not about encouraging the SwapVend as a tool. The first thing we need to do is teach people how to use technology. And I think that's very important, is how to really create that access point to hear something. Let's get people used to wanting to interact with technology in general. I know it sounds like a long drawn out process, but the value that comes from that, from an adoption perspective, is priceless. Yeah. Because I don't want you to just use the platform. I want you to come online, and I want you to be online and do other things online, because it's a quality of life shift. It's you now transforming and you catching up with where the world is going.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things we're seeing is, to your point, buzzwords. But who are the buzzwords for? It's for the big corporates. It's for the formal sector. People are using all these words and talking about this test population that sits somewhere. That's ultimately what it is. What about whether people even are going on that journey and being included?
Exactly.
So creating all these really cool technologies, there's all the stuff that exists, there's so much that exists that we can leverage, but nobody is just working. Let me take that back. There's a lack of intentionality when it comes to bridging that and letting everyone go on that journey.
Yeah.
The more we evolve digitally in the formal markets, the further that income disparity is going to become.
Yes.
Whether we like it or not, it's going to translate into that however we want to look at it, because everything is attached to that value and that gap that sits there. So how we envision it is really the fact that we utilize in community relationships, in this case, the safe hubs, and we go in and we deploy actual people into the environment, because that's what's important. And if it means knocking on doors and helping a go-go put her tavern or her spaza shop onto this and understanding her and helping her with that user journey, then so be it. But the Safe Hub also becomes a place where people we're going to crowd them in and do digital trainings and help people understand what is that? What are we talking about? And I think it's really about mirroring, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The reality of what people are engaging with, and bringing that into
and making it accessible and easy to
making
understand.
it easy to understand. Coming back to the owner-driver example,
Yeah.
I've done this before, maybe not at the scale, but I understood how to meet somebody with how they perceived something. And ultimately, we want the tech to be able to do that at scale. And our people who would be deployed would know that. Yeah.
And that's creating jobs in the process.
Yes.
It's uplifting communities in the process, because you kind of want to use the community, uplift the community, and then pay it forward within
100%.
those communities, right? Which is, it's in my view, it's a real impact story. That's a real financial inclusion, strategy. Why the taxi? Why yellow?
Thank you. I was waiting for my taxi to come in. Not only the fact that I'm from Phoenix and the taxi is the sounds and the feel of my childhood, and I'm a big fan of really great music blaring through the windows. The taxi. So, I mean, if you look at it right now, and if you're looking at the one thing that currently connects the formal and informal sector, and I can ask this of anyone, and they're going to give me the same answer, and that's a taxi. The taxi is the only thing, the only mechanism, the only connector that is meaningfully and effectively connecting those two sectors.
Yep.
And take the taxi out, what happens? The entire connection, the entire access point collapses. So we have helpers, using it as a tangible example. My helper lives in Tembisa. The only way I can access Sandra is through a taxi. Yes, we can speak about using Ubers, and yes, we can go have those conversations, but the only viable way for Sandra to access me and vice versa is for Sandra to jump into a taxi and get to me. The only way for Sandra to access anything that she needs, she's going to jump into a taxi and go to Tembisa Mall. Sandra's always needing to jump in a taxi. Do you know I have to pay Sandra with cash? And that too is dangerous. I'm so apprehensive to say that, because she has to carry the cash.
Yeah.
Because in order for her to get to an ATM to draw the money,
Jump in a taxi.
she has to jump in a taxi.
And she must pay the taxi in cash.
100%. Exactly. It's like a vicious cycle, chicken or egg. And when she gets to the ATM, there's a line outside the ATM. So there's like so many barriers for Sandra to even access her own money. So with that being said, everything that she needs to even do is using a taxi to get to and from wherever she needs to. So why the taxi? Because the taxi symbolizes that in every single sense. It's something that people can understand, relate to. And I think it's so personal to me as well. Because growing up, a taxi was a means of transport for my grandmother, for us, going to university, accessing the opportunities we needed to access. And right now, it's about the power of what that symbolizes. And when you spoke about adoption, I think it just makes it all that easy, because when you create relatability from the get-go, when people see brands designed for them, I think that also gets a lot of buy-in, a lot of loyalty, and a lot of trust.
Yeah.
And it's not meant to manipulate anyone into it, because ultimately everything that we've done in the past 4 years has been designed to try and get to people where we are finding them.
Yeah.
And on a layer above that, I think the importance of and the power of taxis, which are currently transporting masses of people at any given day, the power of that as a physical tool, as a physical infrastructural model, and as a partner to the process is great, because people spend a lot of hours in a taxi.
Yeah.
So on one hand, we want to create this digital taxi, which basically allows people. I didn't answer your question. I just realized that. So taxi symbolizes the connector right now between the informal and formal sectors. And what we are designing is a digital taxi. So how do we create this very same mechanism that's working physically, how do we take that online? So everything that a taxi currently does, we want to transport people to opportunities virtually, digitally, and help the formal and informal sector get access from each other. So this is not just an informal sector tool. Yes, the informal sector is going to trade with each other, but the only way to truly leverage value and to really have impact from a prosperity perspective at an macroeconomic level
Yeah.
is to make sure that the informal and formal sector has an ease of access to each other.
100%. And I think at its very core, those with money need and influence and the ability to better support informal communities and businesses that are thriving should be doing so.
Yeah.
And I think it's great that you are bold in that ask of the formal sector in its many different shapes, sizes, and forms to say participate and get involved, because if you're looking for real transformation within this country and other markets that are very, very similar to this. I mean, there's such a huge SME market and micro merchant market, small business owners, informal communities, townships, informal trade that has cash flow inside of them, but their abilities to access the tools and the education and the opportunities are just lacking. And that's why it is so difficult to come out of poverty. It's so difficult for Africa as a whole to transform, become less poor than we are now. It's not because of a lack of talent or skill or resource. It's a lack of access and the large divide.
100%.
And
to stay on the point of the taxi, like right now, informal township South Africa uses the taxi as a one-way channel to access the informal sector, the formal sector, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you now that there's no channel for the formal sector to access the informal sector. And we are designing something which creates that two-way relationship. So I think from a value proposition perspective, a lot of value, to your point. There's so much happening. There's so much trade taking place. There's skills that's sitting there and it's hubbed inside townships. And right now, there's no way to extract that meaningfully from a formal sector perspective. And right now, creating this channel for the formal sector to be able to access them, that's a behavior we have never seen before. So I don't even know what to even say about that, because we might be very, very pleasantly surprised with very little effort to actually drive formal sector engagement with the informal markets.
And I mean, again, just circling back to the market that you're targeting, who is actually going to benefit from extreme value, right? And that value comes with extreme transformation. They're also extremely cost sensitive. How do you create product that has a low barrier to entry from a language, channel, and cost perspective, while still building a sustainable revenue generating business that someone's going to put their money in?
So yes, thanks for the very easy question. No, but I think for now, the number one, if we're going to create an inclusive tool, it has to be free and accessible. If we don't do that, then I think we are just literally cutting our nose to spite our face. I can't think of any other better example right now. But it has to be accessible. It has to be cost effective, to your point, or it needs to be free, depending on what we do. So the way we're designing the platform will be to create a free platform and build in journeys if we need to, creating paid platforms in the future. But leveraging our networks and really looking at how we can subsidize things. I think that's been the biggest thing right now, is to look at zero rating, leveraging relationships with major telecoms, creating mutually beneficial partnerships so people can actually get what they need, access to market. I think the important thing about creating the platform is not just to say, okay, cool, how can we cross-subsidize this and then just crowd in a whole lot of irrelevant products? It's really about finding value for both sectors, for both parties, and bringing in people that will gain from that, and making sure that the informal sector is not being exploited in that process. So it's not about just crowding in people because they're bringing money, but really being intentional about those connections that we make, creating value. So I think ultimately the ecosystem on its own, to your point, we are not capturing that segment. These are merchants that's in there. There's valuable trade that's taking place. With that being said, just capturing that and bringing that into a formal marketplace in itself is building a network value that we can clearly leverage from a commercialization model perspective.
Yeah, and I think cross-ecosystem collaboration is always extremely important, and there's no reason to reinvent the wheel here.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
so just a shout out to MTN, Vodacom, Yoko, ICOCA, and other partners, banks in this industry, government initiatives, and any other formal sector business. If you're really true to your SME micro merchant transformation focus, please get in touch with us because we'd love to tell you how we could deliver potential value, but also how you could get involved in something that, I personally believe could be a game changer in terms of this particular segment. Looking very forward to launching something with you.
Yeah.
Where are you in terms of your fundraising? What do you require and what's next?
So we've secured our commercialization funding, like I mentioned earlier. So we're sitting with a 3 million rand investment that's with the Safe Hub network. To go to market right now, I think we are looking at just a 5 million rand investment. That's what we need as the next phase, which will cover us for a 24-month development, operationalization, and rollout, and maintaining that operation over the next 24 months. So that's what we need. We need either someone to develop for us or give us the money to do it.
Okay. That sounds very, very exciting, but also very inspiring. I mean, it's, personally, I talk about this on a daily basis. I'm inside of these spaces. I learn and understand so much daily around how businesses are building solutions to problems.
Yeah.
And it's been very inspiring to hear just, more around your story as a human being.
Thank you.
And how that story translates into something that, I'll say it again, is extremely powerful because this is the reality of what we deal with. We talk about digital innovation every day,
Yeah.
but people don't have food to eat.
Yeah.
And it's extremely sad, but it's extremely motivating in terms of, the fact that we're building something that could actually drive impact and make a change. So just, very, very proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well,
Appreciate
thank
the
you.
time.
Yeah, thank you for coming on here and talking with us, telling us about your journey. It's been really awesome to walk a small part of it with you.
Thank you for
I know
having
that
me.
you're not. You were very, very nervous at the beginning
I
of
was
it, but I
very
hope that you're not feeling that nervous anymore.
It's great having a conversation with a friend.
Alrighty,
Thank you.
cool.